intention. We're talking about trading actions for results. At the end of the day, time management doesn't work for sales. It just flat out doesn't work. All these different time management models might be great for somebody who has a 9-to-5 job. But you and I, we get paid for the results that we produce. And most people are showing up just trading hours for dollars. And that's fine if you have a typical 9-to-5, if you're paid a salary and once a year you get an annual review on here's how you're doing. But time doesn't work that way for you and I in sales, does it? Have you ever spent, again, all week working really, really hard only to have nothing to show for it? Yeah, I think we all have. Inside the course Intention, we start talking about some very specific ideas on how we can better manage our day. The biggest reason why so many people fail, it's not because they don't want it bad enough. It's not because they don't have enough self-discipline. It's because the strategy they're using is literally setting them up to fail. Think about that. The strategy they're using is setting them up to fail. It's not that we don't know what we should be doing. It's this idea of implementing that plan that gets lost. And for you and I in sales, it's just different. I remember every year going to an office supply store by my house, and I would love buying one of those day timers. Can you relate to this? It felt good. They were beautiful. They're leather bound, and they have 2 pages of notes. And I bought it. I brought it home, and I said, this is the year that it's going to happen. I'm going to take control of my time. And I would map out my days and what's going to happen when. And I'd get into the office, and by 8:30, it was completely blown up. So let's learn some strategies and techniques on how we can get more of what we're going after during the day that's specific to salespeople. Let's talk about building rapport with people. There's a saying that says people like people who are like themselves. Let's take that one step further. The meaning of your communication is actually the response you get. All right, so that sounds kind of cool, but what the heck does that mean? The meaning of our communication is the response we get. Let's use a silly example. Have you ever said something to someone and they took it completely the wrong way? Yeah, I know I have. But if we dig a little bit deeper and we start to think about how can we build more rapport with people? You may have gotten the exact same sales training as I got when I first got into sales. And somebody was telling me, all right, Bob, first they got to like you. First they got to connect with you. So here's how you do it. You'll walk in to, in my case, someone's office. I spent 15 years in banking as a commercial lender. And when I was brand new, I had to make a sales call on an existing client. They were new to me, but they were an existing client with the bank. And I was kind of nervous. I was really nervous. I had just gotten out of school, right? I had a lot of paper degrees, but not much in the way of real world experience. And I remember walking up to my boss and saying, okay, so how's this supposed to go? Remember, I was brand new. And he said, Bob, it's real easy. He goes, start the conversation off, and you may have gotten the same advice. Find something unique in his office. And bring it up and talk about that. So that was the big advice, right? Find something in common and talk about that. Well, I did. And I walked in, and on his desk, on his credenza, was this picture of him and his daughter who had just gotten married. Big picture, beautiful frame. Before we got started, he said, hey, Bob, I got to run and check on something. Go ahead and have a seat. I'll be back in 5 minutes. Great. So I'm looking around. I said, okay, the picture. And I noticed that his hair was pretty much the same, so it looked like a recent picture, right? Same haircut. When he gets back in, I said, hey, great picture of you and your daughter. You probably know where this is going. Looks like she just got married. Congratulations. And he said, that's not my daughter. That's my wife. Either way, however that situation could have gone, what do you think? Let me stop right there and back up. Let's say that was his daughter and that situation didn't go horribly wrong. What do you think every salesperson that walked into his office and saw this huge picture sitting on his credenza, him and his wife, big frame, Everyone that walked into his office, what do you think they did? Yeah, they were all looking for something in common and to talk about that one thing. And here's where the problems actually start. When we sound like everybody else, we end up getting treated like everyone else. Going back to that first program, if you want something different, you got to do something different. And what we dig into in this program now, Rapport and Influence for Sales, is we talk about the hidden language of rapport. You and I can do a lot better than find something in common and talk about that. I mean, good gosh. I mean, you have kids, I have kids. You play golf, I play golf. You breathe in and out, me too. We can do a lot better than that. And what we coach to in this program is this conversation model. It's called DISC, D-I-S-C. And what that means is that all of us communicate from different points at different points in time. We're going to coach to the idea of how we can recognize very quickly how someone communicates so we can start speaking the exact same language that they are. It doesn't make any sense to walk into a conversation with somebody who's very direct, get to the point, bottom line it for me, and our style, if you will, is very laid back. We're not talking about becoming something that you're not. What we're actually talking about is the idea of we can change how we communicate the spur of a moment, right? I'm a pretty laid back guy in general. Something happens and I get scared, maybe somebody got hurt. All of a sudden, my laid back way of communicating gets amped up. Can you relate to that? Okay. That's exactly what we're going to be digging into. How to communicate with very specific people. Individuals that are very dominant, get to the point. Influencers, people that are laid back and they love to talk. How do we sell to each one of these communication styles? The next course that we have, and really the next step, hopefully you're taking a lot of good notes and hopefully you're able to pull out some ideas that you can actually put into your business. Let's talk about sales questions that open doors and close deals. Do you know what separates amateurs from professionals? Here's what it is. Good salespeople, they have good answers. But great salespeople have great questions. Think about that for just a minute. What is the amateur salesperson, the one that's following that traditional model, right? Find a prospect, see if I can make them interested, move into all the ways I'm going to solve their problems, right? Give away all my expertise for free, hoping that I'm going to make a sale. Instead, let's talk about some ways that we can draw people into a conversation with really great questions. It's our job to help the prospect define reality. What does that mean? Defining reality means it may not make sense for us to work together. And let's start to ask the types of questions that can highlight whether or not it even makes sense for you and I to keep talking. And when we start to ask better questions, here's ultimately the end result. When we start to ask better questions, we're identified as the professional that they need to work with, and we can actually help people get emotionally involved in the conversation. Do you remember that example I gave about going to a seminar, reading a sales book, and they said people buy emotionally, they make decisions intellectually, right? They backfill all the reasons they bought something with intellectual reasons. And I always walked away with this idea of, okay, great, makes sense. People buy emotionally, but how do you do it? Here's how. We start asking better questions. In this program, we're going to detail 9 different types of questions that you can ask. The types of questions that the answers to which separate you from the competition. Identify you as the professional that they need to work with. Let's talk about Move. Move is a course that I created that handles one specific part of our selling cycle. I want to think it over. Are you as frustrated with I want to think it over as I am? Let's talk about a way to let people close themselves, how to get out of the way and start selling more. And here's what we talk about. People buy for their reasons, not necessarily the right reasons. People buy for their reasons, not the right reasons. And I'll go a little bit further, and certainly never for the salesperson's reasons. Think about that model. And I don't want to beat up on amateur salespeople too tight. And by the way, if you can relate to that model, I'm not picking on you. I'm simply picking on those tired, worn out techniques that people can spot a mile away that bring up those walls of resistance. People buy for their reasons, not the right reasons, and never the salesperson's reasons. See, when that amateur salesperson moves into features and benefits, at the very best that they can hope for is that they're bringing up the right kind of stuff that person's going to be interested in. But if we think about that, people buy for their reasons. Doesn't even matter if they're the right reasons, meaning whether or not there are reasons. Initially, our job is to get information, not give it. Again, that traditional sales model says, I want to launch into as quickly as possible all the great stuff that we're going to do, all the ways that I'm going to solve your problems. But what I'm going to suggest in this coaching program Move is ways that we can move back and get them to tell us all the reasons why they should buy. Here's the big reason. If they say it, it's true. People that they rarely argue with their own opinions. If they say it, it's true. If you and I say it, it could be BS, right? From where they're standing. What do they know? They know that at the end of the day, what we really, really want is for them to say yes, for them to buy our product. And they take a lot of the statements that we make, and whether they do it consciously or not, they kind of discount what it is that we're saying. Everyone's the exception. No one's the rule. And what happens is when you start telling somebody, it's going to do this, it's going to do this, it's going to do this, they start saying, well, maybe it might. It could do that. Have you ever bought something that's worked perfect every single time? I mean, take just for a second, take your salesperson hat off and put your consumer hat on. And you're going to make a major purchase. What are some of the thoughts that go through your head? Maybe you start thinking about the time that you bought something that you really hoped was going to work only to get it home and it doesn't. We've all had that experience, haven't we? How do we get them to say it? How do we get them to tell us all the reasons why they would want to buy it? Forget about that list of features and benefits in the brochures that we have that tell them why they should buy it. Let's get their reasons, not ours.